this is Leeza, and today I'm going to be talking about how you can develop your own sexual confidence. As women in a largely patriarchal, sex-negative, heteronormative world, it is hard not to internalize some amount of shame around our sexuality and our body, because historically, women's sexuality and sexual self-expression has been policed and punished, and we've not been taught anything at all about our own sexual anatomy and pleasure for the most part. In schools, at home, it's something that's never talked about. So it is easy to feel as a woman like your sexual self-expression is somehow transgressive or somehow something that's going to bring judgment and shame to you if you express it openly. So many of us struggle with feelings of self-confidence in the bedroom. Even if you want to assert yourself, maybe you self-police because what are they gonna think of me, right? People are so relentless in their slut-shaming of women who own their sexuality that it can be difficult to do even if you want to. So first of all, I hear you. I think this is something a lot of people struggle with, because even when you want to be confident, it can seem like simply being sexually confident itself comes with consequences. But I so strongly believe that it is time for us to own and express and be celebratory of our sexual selves. And for me, one of the most powerful and immediate and easy ways to do this was to cultivate a self-pleasure practice. So much of my own anatomy was unfamiliar to me before I began masturbating. I didn't even know how much pleasure my own body was capable of, and I didn't even know that I didn't know until I started to explore self-pleasure. And I think for many people with vulvas, masturbation has been similarly radical and groundbreaking, because we're fed these very limited scripts about what sex should be like. It's very heteronormative. We're taught that sex equals penetration, that sex is a penis in a vagina, even though for the vast majority of vulva owners, penetration is not the most reliable route to orgasm. Clitoral stimulation is also required. But then again, we're taught that for women, sex should be about having babies, not orgasms, right? So I think for starters, I myself didn't even feel entirely entitled to pleasure. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. It can seem like the gender role assigned to us is to provide pleasure rather than to receive pleasure. And I think that took quite a lot of unlearning for me. And that unlearning was hugely helpful to my own sense of sexual confidence. Just feeling worthy of pleasure, believing my pleasure mattered, believing that it was important for me too to enjoy myself. It was easier said than done, but it made a huge difference. And self-pleasure was hugely instrumental in that process. I think for starters, many women have never even seen their own bodies carefully naked. Many people with vulvas have never actually taken a look at their own vulva. So if you haven't, I highly recommend sitting down with a hand mirror and taking a look and feeling around and seeing what feels good when touched, and being able to accurately name the different parts of your anatomy, because sadly we're not taught this in school, we never talk about it at home, and many people end up living long into their adult lives not really knowing, for example, what the clitoris is or how it feels when it's touched. So I think initiating that exploration for oneself can be hugely powerful. Self-pleasure allows for an experience of sexual pleasure without the risks of pregnancy, disease, or rejection, and it also takes out that pressure that so often as women we feel in partnered experiences, where we're more worried about how we look and taste and smell and whether the other person is enjoying themselves, instead of being able to focus on our own pleasure. I understood how central to my own pleasure the clitoris is. I understood that certain non-genital body parts feel wonderful when touched. I think so often our ideas of partnered sex are so genital-centric, when in fact the whole body is capable of providing pleasure. And so exploring different parts of your body and intentionally and mindfully celebrating all that your body does for you, kind of almost incorporating self-pleasure as an act of self-care, can be so wonderful as a gateway into understanding your own body better, getting more comfortable in your own body, getting more comfortable naked, and it can also truly enhance your own ability to communicate about your own pleasure in partnered experiences. So I think of self-pleasure as a radical and wonderful way to develop your own sexual self-confidence, because it's very difficult to communicate your needs or your preferences in a partnered experience if you're not entirely sure of what they are to begin with. Bring in a sense of non-judgmental curiosity, a sense of playfulness, a sense of joy. Here's to owning your sexuality and feeling sexually self-confident.